Okay, welcome to Interview with Miss Panda. I'm your host, Amanda Schoenblaget. I am excited to have Wenjen join me today and talk about her new book, How to Coach Girls, that she co-authored with Alison Foley, the head women's soccer coach at Boston College. Mia is the co-founder of Aquint when she studied at Harvard University. She is a blogger at Pragmatic Mom, where she covers education and parenting topics. She's also the co-founder of the Multicultural Children's Book Day that celebrates the diversity of children's literature. Mia, I am so excited to have you with us again today.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Wow, welcome back. And we are going to talk about your new book, How to Coach Girls. And, there are some numbers you mentioned at the beginning of the book. I'm going to read it to our audience. And I think it's very surprising. And I think there's something is concerning. And then you have a solution for that. So in your book, How to Coach Girls, the statistics I read is that 70% of all kids quit organized sports by the age of 13, with girls quitting at 6 times the rate of boys. I was surprised to see the numbers, but what can we do to make girls, keep going in the game?
Yeah, when we started the book, I didn't know those stats. I just knew that I had 2 girls who played sports, and it was rare when we had a season where there wasn't some kind of drama that made them unhappy. And sometimes the situation was so bad that, we were heavily involved, just trying to salvage the season and, kind of hoping and praying that we could get through the season and that it wouldn't discourage them from quitting the sport, or if they were unhappy with the sport, we would frantically try to figure out, like, okay, is there something else that they want to try or do? And I would always, especially if it was soccer related, I would always turn to Alison Foley, who was my neighbor, and tell her, like, oh my God, there's some bullying on the soccer team, or there's, like whatever the situation was. And she would give me advice, and then we would, try to solve the problem from there. But what I didn't realize was that, I always thought like, oh, like she's a soccer coach. She coaches girls or young women, and she's been doing it for 20 years. And she's just, naturally good at that. But I didn't realize that even for her, it's, coaching girls successfully. It's kind of this trial and error, learning curve. And she had some advantages because she actually studied sports psychology of girls in college. So she had that going for her, and she was a successful female athlete. But even for her, there's a learning curve. Mm-hmm. And, the more I talked and to other coaches, my daughter's volleyball coach, who is an Olympic scout, and he was one of the setter coaches for the indoor women's Olympic team that went to Rio. And he was the most amazing coach my daughter has ever had, my oldest daughter. And when I talked to him, because we were at a sleepaway tournament, and we were all walking over for a team dinner, I said, oh, this is the best experience my daughter has ever had, because you're so positive. You're constantly giving feedback in the game. And even though they literally did not win a single game, you made them feel like champions, because she would say things like, thank you so much for running for that, for trying to get that ball. Even though, I'm watching and I'm like, that girl has no chance of hitting that ball, but just positive feedback. And he looked at me and he said, oh, I wasn't always that coach. I used to be the coach that would yell the most at the most promising player. And he's a dad of 3 daughters, all like elite players, playing on the national team, 2 years up even. And like, that just floored me. I was like, if this guy also had to, do it from trial and error, like, what chance do we have as parent volunteer coaches, who are not professional, or just doing this because, for our daughters to play, like they need help. And so I had always been bugging Alison, like, you should write a book because you know so much. Because every time I go to you, you have all the answers, or you have such great insight. And finally, I just figured out, like, well, if I just spend some time interviewing her, like organize the book and interview her, then I can sort of collect all this information, this valuable information. Because it turns out, girls are very different than boys. Girls are not naturally confident. It just in general, like you could take the most talented player who maybe even plays at a high level, maybe even plays on the national team. And if you ask her, because this is what Ainsley Lamb did, who was who coached at Yale and also at Boston College for field hockey, she would ask her players, okay, what do you think you're good at? And her players would be like, I don't know. They would focus on what they weren't good at, and they couldn't really even think of anything they were good at. And she would say, come on now, you're on the national team. You're a pretty good player. But girls are just not naturally confident. And we see that across not just sports, but like, in business or in education, just in general. And so girls need a different approach. What's really important is that each girl needs to feel like she has a connection with the coach, and the coach feels that she's a valuable part of the team, and that she feels respected, and that if she doesn't come to a practice or to a game, her presence is missed. We notice, like, we need you. And that's actually a lot more important than having it be super fun. I mean, for girls, they just want to feel respected and valued, and they want to feel like my coach knows me. My coach doesn't just see me as, oh, I have, a great shot, or like I, am like this really hard worker. They want to know about me, that I have siblings, or that I like to sing, or that, in my, or I have, my dog is a golden retriever, and I love my dog. Or they just need to feel that connection. And also girls are a lot more sensitive about, any kind of signs of favoritism. I mean, even if the coach is, not like, signaling by having always the same person be the captain or whatever. They're just so sensitive about trying to figure out, like, does the coach like me? Do my teammates think I'm good? And so if the coach knows that up front, then there's a lot of things that the coach can do to sort of lay the groundwork of a trust relationship. And as soon as each girl has this relationship where she feels like I'm valued, and the coach trusts me, and the coach likes me, and I trust my coach, only then is that player ready to accept feedback. And so it's really important to give constant feedback, of positive feedback.
Yes.
But then also, to make a player better, they need some constructive feedback, but they're not ready for that constructive feedback until they feel like, I trust my coach. My coach believes in me.
Yes.
So
I think that's very interesting. And then I think you were talking about the interaction, and then I think the connection, the bonding from the players, the young athletes, and the coach, actually. And then the story you talk about, the father who is also the coach, and then he has three outstanding professional players. I think the way he coaches, and he talked about, like, he actually learned, from the very beginning, and then be so positive. And like you said, you look at the whole thing, and then he's just being so positive, even though they were not going to win. And I think that is something very, very, it's a very interesting experience, a story to share with all of us. But let me back a little bit, talking about your own kids, because you talk about, you would have, situations with the girls, your own girls, and the dramas, during playing the games. And I also know, like, they actually played all different kind of sports, not just soccer. They play soccer. I think, did they also do like diving and surfing and
they tried everything. I mean, not everything was a club sport, or not everything was a team, but it was like, they volleyball, soccer, rowing. They tried diving, boxing, lacrosse. I mean, they played golf. It's a long list. And between my two daughters and Alison Foley's daughter. It's just, you know, we could add cross country and basketball and track and field and tap dancing and hip hop. I mean, like all kinds of sports and activities. And, you know, it's funny because it's like, it doesn't really matter if it's an individual sport or a team sport or just a clinic or, you know, something that you've learned at sleepaway camp. You know, the same kind of things apply. Like they, because, you know, whether it's a new sport that they're trying for the first time, they feel vulnerable, you know, because they're like, I know I'm not good at this. And even if it's a sport that they've played for a while, they still feel vulnerable. Like, I don't know if the coach thinks I'm good, or I don't know how I rank in this team, or every time the team switches from, you know, year to year, there's always a lot of uncertainty and a lot of doubt, you know, no matter, you know, what your record is, or, you know, so it's interesting that the volleyball coach, the reason why he learned from trial and error is because, like, if he, you know, because girls would literally quit. Like his best player, if he yelled at her too much, she would quit. And so it's keeping the girls in sports, you know, I almost feel like if coaches viewed success instead of wins and losses, or, you know, championships, if they just viewed it by what percentage of the team signs up to come back again next season, I almost feel like that should be sort of the criteria of success, you know, especially for youth sports, you know. And so that's kind of our way of trying to change the dialogue or change the conversation about just sports in general, but certainly, you know, sports and girls, because if we shift that, then all of a sudden, you know, we're thinking about other things as a coach. And,
right.
And those are the things that, you know, that actually matter to the girls, because when it comes down to it, girls and boys, when they ranked, like, what do kids care about? Like, winning was actually like 70th on the list. I mean, they don't care. It's, you know, it's really like maybe the parents who care, you know? And so, you know, so we're just hoping that if we give tools to parents and tools to coaches and sort of share like things that worked and, you know, and why things, you know, why things didn't work for coaches, and this is why they do things differently. This is why they, you know, why they choose captains a certain way, or this is why when they form small groups, they just don't let girls form their own groups. You know, they count off because a lot of times, especially for like a town sport, girls will come, or for a club sport, girls will come in by carpools, by towns. And so they're naturally already separated. And so it, you know, or even from town sports, I noticed, because kids will come in from elementary schools or from middle schools. They'll come in little groups because that's naturally who they know. And even just breaking down those barriers is so important, so that each girl doesn't feel like, you know, that group doesn't like me, or they never pass to me, or, you know, because for me, like when my kids would come back and they would say, I made a new friend because it was someone on their team from a different school, that would be like a highlight, you know. They wouldn't say like we won and lost, or I played really well, or I, you know, you know, we had so much fun practice. It would be like, I made a new friend. And that was kind of, you know, like really motivating, and made them want to go back, you know, for that practice or for that game, or, you know, or find other ways to spend time with that person, whether it's a sports camp or a play date, or have them try something else, another sport together. You know, like with those relationships too, girls are more willing to take risks. And that, you know, that's just like valuable, you know, traits that we want in our daughters, that moves across sports that can be applied to life.
Right. And I think it's exactly because we see more and more kids are participating in sports at a very young age. And then I think, like you mentioned, like sometimes the parents are more into the winning than the kids. Bigger kids, they want to have fun, they want to make new friends. And I think you're breaking the groups, because, you know, like if those people, they come together, they already know each other. But if they can extend that relationship to other friends or new players in the group, I think that is bonding for all the players, and that's very important. So actually, coaches are actually have very like a leader role to help the kids to connect to each other, not just the ones they know, but extend the understanding and the relationship with other kids. I want to actually share a few sentences from the book, How to Coach Girls. And the one part is, a coach can have a really significant impact on athlete. We have the opportunity not only to develop them as a skilled players, but as better person. It's a huge responsibility, but also an incredible rewarding part of the job. I think, you know, that's what we're talking about here. And then, but for parents, and then is it very hard for parents to be volunteer coaches? And then I think this book, How to Coach Girls, is serving as a guide to give a lot of advice on how to coach girls. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, sure. Because it's something as simple of like just giving them, you know, like a tool. Like, for example, like when we said, like, you know, your team is naturally going to have small pockets of cliques, you know, because people, they'll know each other from elementary schools or from towns, or they're coming in through carpools. And so they're naturally going to segregate. And so if a coach is just more sensitive and aware of that, then it's really easy to just have solutions. For example, of saying, okay, everyone pair up, but make sure it's someone that you don't know, you know, or make a group of 3, but I want to see 3 different towns represented in every group. Or even as simply as we're going to form groups, count off by 4, because, you know, girls naturally stand by their friends. And so something as simple as just counting off is going to separate the group. And you can even go further, you know, with icebreakers, to say, like, pair off in 2, and each of you, I want you to find out, you know, something about the other person we're going to share. And it could be, you know, related to sports or not related to sports, but those like small things that a coach can do, it goes a really long way of building team chemistry, and just finding ways to help the girls find connections. Those connections can last beyond, you know, beyond the season, you know, and, you know, it helps them, you know, no matter what age they are, because when they transition from an elementary school to a middle school, for example, having that connection and a familiar face makes that transition easier. But also just kind of modeling, like, here's how we find connections with people, or, you know, here's, you know, even recognizing someone that goes out of their way. Like, instead of always recognizing the most skilled player or, you know, the goal, whatever, you could recognize, you know, I want to recognize Hannah because, wow, she was so thoughtful. She cleaned up all the balls without anyone asking her. Or, you know, Lydia, she let someone go in front of her because she knew that person, you know, had to leave early. Or just if you like, whatever you recognize is what your team will then strive to do. And so I think if a coach is just thinks about that, you know, even, you know, just to realize that, then, you know, it changes, you know, what you recognize and what you talk about. And we also talk about like service work, because for a lot of these girls who, you know, their lives are so busy, like, you know, when their sport is in season, maybe they play for their town and maybe they also play for their club. And, you know, that's like probably like can be 6 times a week. And so they have no free time. And so like the team is sort of their social life, and also, you know, their extracurricular. And so if a coach says, I'm going to take the time, and instead of one practice, we're going to do, you know, service work, whether it's, you know, volunteer work around, a cause that's related to, like, say a parent because they're battling an illness, or it's to help someone less fortunate in a sport, or whatever they choose. It's not just it's like it serves so many things. One, it just gives them the time to do something that's service oriented, and two, it gives the girls a different way to connect. Because now it's not like who's good at the sport. Now it's just like who has ideas, or who's working hard for this for this service endeavor. And it also shows that, like, the coach cares more than just winning. The coach cares about providing these opportunities and helping other people, and causes that are beyond this team. And so sometimes it can be something very small, like we're all going to wear pink, pink socks, or we're all going to put pink headbands on, or ponytail holders, because we want to raise awareness for breast cancer. Or it could be something where we're all going to take that time that's already allotted, that hour and a half, or that 2, whatever it is, and we're going to do XYZ. Or it can just be like we're going to all bring in our old, used, too small cleats and uniforms, because there's this group where kids can't afford that, and now we're helping them play, whether it's in the United States or it's overseas. And so there's so many ways that a coach can build chemistry and just provide this opportunity for girls to learn, like, so much more than just how to get better at a sport. And I think when we interviewed all those coaches, that was one of the reasons why they left their jobs. And I think too, as parents, like, those are the kinds of opportunities we're always seeking for our children.
Right. And I think this is very interesting, because I think you look at every child who's participating as a person, a whole, and then to bring it to the community, like work things together outside of the sport itself, but it's just like going outside to do something different, so they get to know each other in a different level, in a different environment. And I think that's very interesting. And then I think that actually builds up a different kind of relationship, and actually closer relationship between the players. And I think in the books, there are 22 chapters. And then I think what is very valuable is that every chapter at the end, there's a summary. So you can actually look at it and then have something to take away if you need a quick reference. And then I also want to mention some of the topics in the book. So you have like the differences between coaching girls and boys, and keeping it fun. Positive reinforcement is critical. Developing good people, not just good players. Building a player's confidence. Handling a losing streak. Preseason planning. I mean, these are just a few of the topics you covered in the book. And then it's, as a whole, is that all like from your own personal experience and then interviews from all the other coaches? How do you come up with all the topics? But these are so important.
Oh, it was easy when your kids have a lot of drama. So it's every situation we could think of, I was like, oh yeah, that happened to us. Like, that's a topic. And then I had my husband read it as well, because he coached our girls, I think all 3 of them, in multiple sports. And then he added a couple topics that like maybe didn't pertain to us as much, but he just thought like, oh, these are important topics, like the body image. And puberty, he was like, that's an important topic. So we covered that. But the book has the bullet points, because it's also meant to be like, you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can use it to flip around. You can just read the summary points for things where you're like, okay, like that's interesting, but like that's not really what I'm grappling with right now. And just go straight to that chapter of like, okay, this is our situation right now. What can I do? And that's why I kind of did it that way. So it's like you can just do the summary points if you're in a rush, or that's all the information you need. But then if you need more meat, the meat is there. But then we also have resources. So if you go to our website, howtocoachgirls.com, like the forms that we created in the book for, kind of organizing yourself before the season, those are now all downloadable, free printable forms. And then I also expanded like the evaluation forms. Like I created, which is new, like a coach evaluation form. So if you're a coach and you're like, I think I'm doing a great job, but I want to make sure I am. There's a downloadable form for that you can give to parents and players. But there's also specific forms, if you want to give feedback to players, sport by sport. Like so far we have 3 or 4. I'm gonna add more team sports to that. And then we also have forms like when you organize, if you want to have players and parents sign a code of conduct, just so that they know what the expectations are. So the player code is pretty short, and it's really more inspirational about just just really about having a good experience and just being respectful to everyone. And the parents is a little bit more about what you should say and not say, whether it's on the ride home or it's on the field. And so it's all just meant, like, if you do a little bit of work up front, then it will just sort of avoid a lot of the pitfalls that your team or you may experience, and just make for a smoother season. And then hopefully then everyone has this really great season, and then everyone wants to sign up again. So it's our hope is like front load it a little bit, do a little bit of the work up front, but like we try to make it easy by giving you all the forms and kind of what to think about, and then you're prepared. It's sort of like just a little quick boot camp, so then you won't be surprised, and you'll avoid all these situations because you've sort of set clear expectations, and now everyone kind of knows what they should be doing. So
Exactly. I think those are great tools, because not only that, the tools online people can download on the How to Coach Girls website, and also you actually have the preseason planning. So actually you are providing the tools so things will be easier for the coaches, and especially for volunteer parent coach. We see a lot of volunteer parent coaches nowadays, and then we can touch on the preseason planning. And also I want to talk about there's one chapter you talk about how to coach your own girls, your own daughters.
Right, because for all of us, if you're a parent volunteer coach, it's because we were recruited. In order for our daughters to play on this team, they need parents to volunteer, and sometimes it's the parents have a lot of experience in that sport because they played that sport in college or high school, and sometimes there's just not enough of those parents to go around, and so just to have enough bandwidth for that team, for that sport to have enough teams, then sometimes we have to parents get recruited, and like how generous of them to give up their time and be in the situation where maybe it's not the sport that they know or they've never coached before. And so for those parents especially, like that's why we created the book. And and then it adds another element when not only are you trying to run this team of maybe 12 or 20 kids, but now it's your daughter as well. And so you have this complicated relationship already, just like mothers and daughters or fathers and daughters, whatever age, but maybe especially teenagers, or middle schoolers. And so it's like, well, how do we make sure that's a smooth relationship, and that the daughter, it doesn't feel like either they're giving too much feedback, to the parent, like, we don't like that drill, or they're getting, or in an effort to try to make sure that no one thinks that you're favoring your own child, you actually end up being too hard on your child. They're the first ones that get pulled out, or they're the ones that maybe get harsher criticism. And so so we asked a lot of the coaches who coach their own daughters for various years, and they all said the same thing. They said it's so critical to sort of have a conversation before you commit to being a coach. Like, I would like to coach because, otherwise, we don't have enough teams, or I would like to coach because, this is a sport that I can bring some expertise to, and I want to make sure that you, my daughter, are okay with it. And and I want to talk about what will it feel like for that hour and a half of practice or that 2 hours of a game. And I want you to understand that I love you so much and you're so special to me. But when I'm coaching, it's so important that it just seems like I treat you the same as everybody else. And, you don't have any feedback on starting lineup. And, we don't talk about how anyone is doing on the team in the same way. I don't talk about how, you're doing on the team with someone else's daughter. And, and so I think just having the same thing, so setting expectations, setting everyone up for success so that they know what to expect and they know how to behave and there's no surprises and then there's no hurt feelings. And then that can be a great way to prevent any kind of, meltdown or, just unhappy situation because, especially, like the parent is literally doing it to make sure their child has a great experience first and foremost. You know what I mean? And like how terrible if, taking all the time to make this a great experience for the team that somehow, there's friction between the parent and child. Like that's the last thing. That's the last thing the last reason why they volunteered their time. And so,
right,
but,
right.
yeah, you don't always realize, well, I need to have that conversation beforehand,
It's so interesting. It's there, but we never notice that, or we don't know how to deal with it because we all want to volunteer to help. And I think you make it so clear that because of the book, How to Coach Girls, actually talk about how do you separate that, and you talk to your girl first, and then so everybody is going to be the same. That's not very easy, but it's really good to have a guide, a tool to refer to and understand what to do and how to respect everybody and then put everybody together as a team. And also for parent volunteers, a lot of times it's very difficult because sometimes you have new players and then you have more experienced players. And how do you deal with that and to make everybody feel welcomed and also, they can all do a good job?
Right. I think it's so important for the coach because it's like the coaches will naturally gravitate, I think, to the more experienced, the more talented players. But those tend not to be the ones who need the most encouragement. And so I think just like maybe like that would the new players, the ones that are new to the game or feeling like I'm not sure if I should be here. Maybe that would be the group I would focus my initial time getting to know and forging a relationship. And sometimes it can be as simple as like, hey, I love your cleats or I love your socks or, just finding like a small, like unconnected connection. And then also just to watch them acknowledge their hard work or to note their improvement or just to, make them feel like you're really, you're doing a great job and you're really valued. And we're so glad that you're on the team. And, even like how brave of you to work so hard and to try so hard. I think like that acknowledgement goes such a long way. So, a coach is so busy, like a volunteer coach with so much on their plate. And so what we try to do is just simplify it to like the few things you should do preseason. And when you have so many things on your plate, then just focus on these 3 things, because these are the things that will hopefully make your team chemistry stronger. And if the team feels good about themselves and they feel really connected to the coach, then kind of nothing else matters. They don't care if they lose. They don't care if the game gets rained out or they're covered in mud or like those things that are recoverable. But if someone just feels like, oh my God, like I don't belong here, or like they're so mean to me because they think I'm terrible, or I know I'm not very good. Like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like I thought I wanted to try a sport, but like, this is such a bad experience. Like, I never want to try anything new again, or I'm completely done with sports. Like, how devastating, right? Like no coach wants that, or even a player. if they knew like your insensitive comment made someone quit and maybe they'll never try a sport again, I think they would be shocked and devastated. Like nobody wants that. And so, you know, I think if we all sort of work together for this, you know, kind of getting everyone on the same page of value and respect, I mean, that at the end of the day, that's all that matters, you know?
Yeah, that's very big actually, because they need to feel they belong, even though they're learning. And I love the way you talk about it. You know, maybe the newer players, they need more attention. The more experienced ones are the ones that, like, you know, you kind of merge them in, all put them all together gradually. I think that is really wonderful. And then so I think How to Coach Girls, this book actually really delivers, you know, great, you know, topics, and then also covers all the topics, and then also delivers so well in each chapter. And then I personally think parenting is like coaching. And then so parents, you know, when parents become the coach for your own girls, and I think that is actually something you can develop and then also learn, you know, and then to make it even great, and then be a part of the journey when your kids are doing sports. This is a fun question, I think, because we're talking about sports. So how about, Mia, if you can have a big sign on the sports field for coaches, and what would it say?
I think, like, you know, like actually, like in California, they have what's called Silent Saturday. And, you know, it's, you know, sometimes less is more, you know, like if, you know, you don't have to say a lot, you know, maybe it's just, you know, before the game starts, I love watching you play, you know, have fun. And then afterwards, I loved watching you play. What do you want to eat? And maybe that's enough, you know? Like they don't, you know, they don't really need commentary, you know? And if it's difficult to keep it purely positive, you know, because a lot of times too, like players can't hear you, or they find it confusing, or, you know, they're trying to hear what the coach says. And, you know, it's just like too much stimuli. And so maybe it's just to observe and be supportive and say, you know, we just like watching you play. We like that you're having fun. We think it's so great that you've made all these new friends. And like, wow, look at all these things that you can do now that you couldn't do before. And like, wow, you've worked so hard to learn those skills. We're so proud of you. Maybe, you know, maybe we don't, you know, maybe that's the message, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And also I think big smile with all that. And I think that delivers the growth mindset, actually. Just say, what do you want to eat? And I think that really actually, you know, maybe they're very hungry, you know, and then it's so much fun to watch your plate. That's all wonderful. Yeah. Mia, I know I just launched a book, and then you have a few book signing and book events coming up. Would you like to share with us? So I think people will love to see you and read a book.
Thank you so much. So Alison and I will be, we have two events in Massachusetts. So one of them is in Watertown, which is just outside of Boston. And that's this Friday at 5 o'clock. And we're holding it at Artemis Yoga, which is a yoga studio. And our connection to that is Alison and I and the owner, we also did this Soccer on the Mat, which combines soccer and yoga to help girls sort of like stay relaxed, and also injury prevention, and just have a sort of positive mindset. And so we hold those classes in the winter at Artemis Yoga, and so that's why we're doing a book signing there. And then on Saturday, we have a book signing at 4 o'clock in the South Shore in Hingham, and that is at South Shore Select. It's a soccer club, and they have an indoor facility. I think it's called South Shore. I think it's facility. And so that actually is the club that Alison grew up playing. So that's where she developed her skills, and she was, you know, like on the national team and played at a very high level. I think she was All-American. And so she's kind of going home, giving back to her roots. And she actually is a member of that South Shore Select. So she coaches girls that are, I think, in high school, and develops them. And for the girls who want to play in college, she provides a lot of support. And so we'll be there. And it's also near her hometown where she grew up in Plymouth. So we'll be there on Saturday. And yeah, we would love to have people come. It'll be awesome.
That sounds wonderful. That's fantastic. So I will have all the event information listed in the our description below, and I will also have your social media links, and then how to coach girls website listed. So and also how to coach girls, the book actually is available on Amazon. And then also I think, so people can connect with you and with Alison.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mia, for joining us today. And, anything you want to add?
I mean, if coaches are looking to do service events around sports, I also created a list of all the nonprofits that I personally screened. And it's sort of listed on the website. It's by various sports. So I just wanted to make things easy. And also, we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and we're looking for feedback, and we're looking for what coaches are struggling with, and happy to provide, answers or solutions or resources. So if anyone has an issue and feels like, okay, we didn't address it enough, or needs more, comments, or more information, just feel free to reach out either through email or social media. Like, I'm not great at, to be honest, about direct messages, so just do something and tag me or send an email. But yeah, we're hoping just to kind of keep this conversation alive, what coaches want and what they need, especially the parent volunteer ones, because we've been in those shoes, and we're all about supporting the parents who I think are heroic in volunteering to help their children in their community.
Fantastic. The conversation does not stop. The conversation keeps going from the book and all the way to the website and any social media platform of how to coach girls. Thank you, Mia, once again for joining me, and thank you for watching this episode of Interview with Miss Panda. I will see you next time.